So today's sermon title is taken from Jesus' words to Zacchaeus, as I have read in the gospel, come down. And at the risk of over-interpreting the text, I will use Zacchaeus' act of coming down to give a message on the topic of returning. Returning back to who we are and returning back to whose we are. So the first is an invitation to return back to our authentic self. And the second is a reflection on our inevitable returning back to the place where we came from, to dust, to the ground beneath all of us, or to put it in a different way, to contemplate our return back to eternality by way of mortality. Which ties into our occasion this morning of All Saints Sunday. But first, let me just share, when I was young, or younger, I liked going to the roof of the house. There was really no rooftop, it was just the roof of the house, just to hang out by myself. And I remember the first few weeks, I'm driving my mom crazy. And you'll hear her shout and scream, "Ferdie, come down from there." Until there was a time that she just gave up and let me be. On the roof, I can chill and relax with my friends and sometimes with my books. I can see the stars on a clear night sky. I can gaze at faraway rivers and fish farms. I can even fly my kites without the worry of the string being caught on those pesky electric wires around the house. And I'll return back to this later, but first let me give the first invitation. Return back to who you are. The story says that Zacchaeus ran ahead, climbed a tree so he can have a better vantage point, which I think represents the story of his life. He's been running ahead and he's been climbing trees, many trees. I mean, he might be small, but the act of climbing speaks of who he was. He was skillful, he was smart, and he single-handedly was an ambitious person. He had to. Because we learned last week that tax collectors were despised people in their society, right? Dreaded, but at the same time derided by many. And the people around him that day who recognized him was giving him some problem or giving him a hard time seeing. And the climb was him saying, "You tall guys are preventing me from getting a view? Well, look at me now. I'm taller and higher than all of you." But on that elevated place, he was also detached and separate from many, and no one can see him, but Jesus saw him and told him to come down and have dinner with him. So coming down is not a positive word for the high flyers, the achievers, and the go-getters. It was not and is still not a positive word for the empire and the colonizers back then, because it has a connotation of decline and decrease and downgrade. And many Zacchaeuses of today might say, "Well, I'm actually just fine up here on top of this social ladder. Thank you very much. I'm not coming down." And in the larger scheme of things, there is really nothing wrong with climbing trees. I climb many trees as well. I got preoccupied with building a career, establishing a financial security, and all that external achievements in life. And then during my ego-centered, unconscious days, I'm too concerned about how can I feel more important? How can I look good? How can I feel significant around here? "Ferdie, come down from there." I still hear the voice of my mom still echoing in my head. It's a good reminder. "Zacchaeus, come down," Jesus said. And ironically as well, his name literally means holy. righteous, and clean, which could be read as Jesus saying to Zacchaeus, Zach, remember your name. Remember your name, because your name carries a load of potential goodness. Your name can be your roadmap to finding your way back. Your name can be your blueprint to who you can become again after you lost your way. Your name. Remember it. I believe that coming down is not an act of self-humiliation, but coming down is an invitation for us to a new season of self-discovery. It is an act of returning to who we really are. What does it look like to come down from tall trees of external validation, to abandon those outdated identities that is not really who we are, and then to return and embrace again and know again those long denied parts of who we really are in God? Here's my second invitation: return back to whose we are. Transitioning now to All Saints Sunday, but using this similar analogy of coming down, because every year, yes, we remember our loved ones who have gone before us, and we have this meaningful time of lighting candles, singing songs, and remembering and reflecting. But every year as well, we are also confronted with this uncomfortable topic of death. And it's hard to name it because sometimes it's not easy to admit it, but there is this reality that we live in a society that has a high degree of discomfort and unease on the subject of dying. So death becomes a taboo, a distasteful topic to many. While in other cultures, dead bodies are openly displayed in open casket, not here. We hide dead bodies because we don't want to see it. So that becomes an abstract idea that when it suddenly comes, some people get shocked and in despair. But what if? What if death can simply be seen as a return movement, a homecoming? What if All Saints Sunday is inviting us this morning to see that death is not disturbing or terrifying at all, but death actually gives more value to life? In the words of author Brian McLaren, when he said, death tells us our lives matter because they are precious, long enough to be meaningful, but short enough that we cannot take even a single day for granted. Or in the words of Eckhart Tolle, another author, who said, we don't have to see death as the opposite of life, but life is the eternal that holds birth and lifespan and death all together. So from natality to mortality, from the womb to the tomb, and everything else that happens in between is part of this grand story we call life. So what if we will see death as a doorway to eternality? What if coming down is the doorway to rising up in God, because we are still a people who believes in the power of resurrection. Can I hear an amen on that? Ferdie, come down from there. I still remember and still hear her voice. It's a good reminder. And there's really nothing wrong with being on top of the roof, but eventually I have to come down and be with my family, be with my friends, and go to school and live life. Jesus said, Zacchaeus, come down. And he did. And he met Jesus. And his life was never the same again. Friends, the message called, come down. One